Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Wednesday afternoon, PowerMizzou live show weekly coming to you here on YouTube. Hopefully, plenty of you will join us live here over the next 30, 40 minutes. Some of you will be listening on the podcast. Hopefully, most of you listen before, say, 5 hours from now when Missouri and Texas A&M play, because that's what Drew King and me, Gabe DeArmond, are going to talk about. First, we'll get to some SEC basketball, maybe talk a little bit of Florida, take your questions, anything like that. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the comment queue. We will certainly get to those as we go along throughout the show. Again, mostly focused on basketball. If you have a football question, throw it in there. I'll answer it if I feel like it, to be quite honest. So appropriate intro to this show. Missouri is playing at Texas A&M. Texas A&M, College Station, the NIL capital of college athletics, or at least football. They don't appear to know basketball is happening, but they do pour their heart and wallets into college football. James Carlton wants to help you guys do the same at the University of Missouri. He also wants to take care of your insurance needs. I should probably mention that part first. CarltonInsurance.net. If you want to get in touch with James, 314-961-4800. You call him, you go online, you get a quote, you mention PowerMizzou. He's going to donate $20 to the Every True Tiger Foundation. That is Mizzou's new NIL collective. I'm actually meeting with some people tomorrow. Hope to have some special deals for our subscribers to maybe be able to donate to Mizzou's NIL collective as well. So we'll keep you posted about that. But for right now, go through James, get an insurance quote. He will make a $20 donation. Drew, not on the road for this one. Is this the first game you have not been to in person this season? Is that accurate?
It'll be the second. I wasn't at the UCF game.
Oh, right. I forgot they played it at UCF. Yeah, we don't count that one. That one I forgot about. But so yeah, College Station. In interest of full disclosure, we are not traveling this week to either College Station or Gainesville, but we will be at most of the rest. I know Drew is going to Oxford in a couple weeks, and Missouri's home this week. So just kind of first impressions, Drew, to me, Texas A&M is like a team that was supposed to be good and then looked like maybe it wasn't very good, and now all of a sudden is starting to look like, oh, maybe the first impression was right, and maybe they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, they kind of underperformed in non-conference for sure. I don't think they came out with really any impressive wins during that stretch. And then they come out of SEC play just swinging haymakers, pick up wins over LSU and Florida. They're undefeated now in the SEC. And so it's definitely going to be a pretty difficult test for Missouri. I know like Ken Palm has them losing the next 4 games, I think. So this is going to be a pretty important stretch for the Tigers here.
Yeah, I mean, A&M's non-con, they beat Louisiana Monroe, Abilene Christian, lost to Murray State, got beat by Colorado by 28, beat Loyola, which is no longer what we know Loyola to be, beat DePaul, SMU, lost to Boise, beat Oregon State, lost to Memphis and Wofford. I mean, like, not only did they not beat anybody, they didn't even play anybody in the non. That's the worst non-conference. Like, that's a worse non-conference schedule than Missouri by far.
I think you could make that argument for sure. I also want to point out like the Oregon State win. I think that was their only like high major win in non-conference, and Oregon State is not good.
Right.
Just so people know out there, like that's not an impressive win to have.
I do admire Oregon State's coach, though. I assume Wayne Tinkle is still the coach. I don't really know. But, like, he was dreadful and was going to get fired. They made the NCAA tournament with, like, a 500 record one year. He gets to the Elite Eight. They signed him to a big contract extension, and they've been awful ever since then. So, well done, Wayne. Very impressive.
And I can confirm he is still the coach there. So
okay, excellent. That's your Oregon State talk for the season. I doubt they'll ever come up again. So A&M, I mean, look, I think Buzz Williams is a heck of a coach. I'm surprised he hasn't been better there than he has. I think this is a pretty, like, I kind of think A&M's got to make the tournament, or they might start thinking, is this worth it? Of course, they do have to save $90 million in case they want to fire Jimbo next year, so they might not have the money to do that. But point being, he hasn't really gotten it going yet. But like you've looked at this team a little more than I'm sure I have. You wrote the preview this morning. Like, what's the worry for Missouri tonight, other than, hey, you're on the road in a place where it's not going to be all that great an environment. Like, you're kind of going to have to create your own energy.
Yeah, so I think first of all, you can find my preview on PowerMizzou.com. But one of the things I wrote was that Texas A&M isn't necessarily a high caliber scoring team inside the paint, and they're a bad shooting team. Where they get a lot of their points from, though, is the free throw line. They have 25.5% of their points coming from foul shots, from free throws, right? They're really good at drawing fouls. And I know that that was an issue that came up in the Arkansas game for Missouri, was that Dennis Gates felt like they lost the free throw battle. And it was one of their main points of emphasis going into the Vanderbilt game. And they did a good job of that. And so go ahead.
So I want to stop you there real quick, because Dennis Gates said after the Vanderbilt game, I mean, correct me if this is not the way you heard it, but he basically said, yeah, I was fine with open shots. I just didn't want us to send him to the free throw line. Like, I don't think I've ever heard a coach say that. And it almost burned him, to be honest.
It did. I don't know that that was the game plan. He did say that that's kind of how they took his instruction, I think, was that
Yeah.
like, don't foul, but they kind of gave up the lane because of that. And so
Right.
that's something that they'll probably look to correct going into Texas A&M tonight. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that I think Kobe Brown is going to be kind of a target for them on offense. They're going to try to get at him and have him pick up 2 quick fouls, get him out of the game. And so that's kind of where I see Texas A&M taking this, is to make it kind of a rock fight, slow it down, and really try to make a living at the free throw line.
Well, and it's interesting because Texas A&M, I don't know if he's their best player, but he's one of their best players, Marble, Julius Marble. And he's pretty similar to Kobe, similarly sized, like versatile. Some nights he might be more of an inside guy, but he's capable of going outside. Like, I think that's a pretty interesting matchup tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like Texas A&M is a great inside scoring team. Like I said, they'll feed Marble, but I think what Marble really brings to the table is the rebounding presence, right? And really the whole team does. There's just kind of a physicality with this team, and Marble really personifies that for them. He's just a big guy, and is going to give Kobe, a battle inside.
And the other thing about A&M, like we've already said, they don't shoot that well. They don't score a lot, but I don't have the number directly in front of me, but they are one of the better offensive rebounding teams in the country. Fortunately, offensive rebounding has caused Missouri no issues in the last couple of weeks. Like, they are locked down defensive rebounding.
Sure, not at all. No, I think what's interesting about Texas A&M too is that not only are they a great offensive rebounding team, but it's really a team effort. I don't think any individual player is averaging like more than 5 rebounds a game. And so it's going to take a complete effort from Mizzou, I think, to kind of negate that effect that they have on the boards and limit those second chances.
And I'll be interested to see, because I think it was the Kentucky game, but it honestly might have been the Vanderbilt game. I don't know. One of them, I said, like, the opposition's best approach here is just throw the ball somewhere near the basket and go get it themselves. Like, you don't need to even make the first one. Just get it on the rim and go get it. And you could see that being a concern tonight. And you're on the road. It's going to be called differently. You've got to be a little careful not to be too physical. I don't know. This is one that I think a lot of Missouri fans maybe weren't giving enough credence a couple days ago, but it better have Mizzou's full attention tonight.
Yeah, I think rightfully so, coming out of non-conference play too, right? I don't think anybody really expected Texas A&M to go into this game on a 4-game winning streak, right? Like they're kind of building a lot of momentum right now, and a win over a ranked team would do a lot for the rest of their season and their confidence. And so, I think this is going to be a tougher matchup than anticipated.
And the reason you really want to get this one is because it takes pressure off you on Saturday. And guys, we'll get to your questions here in just a minute. But when it kind of finish up the week, they go to Gainesville on Saturday. And I've been saying for a couple weeks now, just go 1-1.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's like when you go to the line, you're tied and you just got to make 1 and 2. It's a whole lot easier to make that first one, man. Because if you miss the first one, then you put even more on the second one. So,
Yes.
if Missouri can get a win tonight, then you kind of go to Gainesville playing with house money. And Florida's another one of those teams. Like, these are the games that are going to separate whether you finish third or ninth in the SEC. Like, I really think the the distance between those two places in the league standings are not going to be more than 2 or 3 games. And these could be two of the teams you're battling with.
Yeah, and by the way, like Florida's not gonna be a pushover team either,
Right.
right? Like they
Colin
might
Castleton
match
can
up.
play.
Yeah, like Liam Robbins from Vanderbilt gave Mizzou a lot of trouble in their past game. Guess who else has a 7-footer who can swat
Right.
shots and make
Like, Liam
shots in the
Robbins
post?
is, to me, a little bit less talented version of Colin Castleton.
Exactly. And so, like you said, the Texas A&M game, they probably actually match up a little bit better. And so you definitely want to take advantage of that kind of matchup while you have the chance, right? Because the Florida game is not going to be any easier.
So before we get to some of the questions, so like we've said, hey, yes, this game needs Missouri's full attention. They have to play it one game at a time. We all understand that, but I don't care because neither one of us is playing. So we can look at more than one. Adding in Alabama and Arkansas at home next week, what would surprise you more over the next 2 weeks? 4-0 or 0-4?
I think 4-0.
Me too.
Yeah.
Now that's not saying I think Missouri is going 0-4, but I think 0-4 is more likely than 4-0.
Yeah, just because you had to add in the fact that they're going to be on the road for the first two games, it's I think the Arkansas game showed like it's going to be really tough to
It's
win
different.
some of these games outside of Missouri, and then you come back home and you're playing two of the top three teams in the league, and so like those games are going to be even tougher, I think. And so yeah, there's a lot of challenges going into these next 4 games for Missouri, and so I would be surprised if they ended up winning all 4 of them.
And to me, 2-2 is the goal. 1-3 does not take you out of tournament consideration. It does not wreck your season. I think it does probably take you out of serious thought that this is like a top 4 team in the SEC if they go 1-3.
Yeah, I agree. It probably knocks them out of the top 25 too. They probably
Yeah.
won't, be one of the top uh, 6
Yeah.
seeds. Yeah, like
Right. You're going to have to go at least 500 over the next 2 weeks to kind of stay where you're at. And then
right.
it gets, I don't want to say it gets easy, but it gets a little easier.
For sure. Yeah. Yes. You're not having to go up against Arkansas twice again.
Right.
You've already got Kentucky out of the way. I think really the only top 4 or 5 team that's left on the schedule after that is Tennessee, maybe Auburn.
Tennessee and
Um,
Auburn, yeah.
yeah. So it does get a little bit easier after this
Well, and
stretch here.
even before the season, when I looked at this schedule, when I frankly did not think this was an NCAA tournament team, like when I had them going 7-11 in the SEC, that was after like a 1-6 start.
Mhm.
So the back half of the schedule certainly is a little bit easier. So what I want to do, I want to get to the questions and comments you guys have, and then after that, we're going to talk just a little bit kind of SEC wide basketball because it's
Mhm.
a pretty good night in the league. It's a big week in the league, and I think this is a really going to be a really fun league to follow. And Jason says, "Are we finding out the Kentucky win isn't as impressive, but maybe the Vandy survival isn't as damning?" That's fair. Vandy is a little better than I thought. I mean, they were leading Tennessee at halftime last night. Now they didn't close it out, but nobody else has done much against Tennessee. What the pure accident that Drew and I are wearing blue, by the way. But what the
Yes.
hell is Kentucky doing? Like,
Um,
I mean, South Carolina came into last night 205th in KenPom. Like I saw a tweet that said this wouldn't be Kentucky's worst loss of the year. This would be one of Kentucky's worst losses in a decade, and they lost it.
Yes, they did. And it's weird too because it's not the guy who you think would be beating Kentucky, right? Gigi Jackson is going to be a first round NBA lottery kind of guy, right? And so he had a good night, but you lost to Michi Johnson. Like, there's not a lot of teams that do that. And so Kentucky is really just in a tough spot. I don't know if it's because like the fit around Oscar isn't very good, or if it's just like the Mizzou loss did something to their psyche where they don't feel like Kentucky anymore. Maybe like the Space Jam aliens came and took their superpowers away.
I mean,
it's bad.
South Carolina's best win before last night was Clemson. They beat Clemson 60-58 in the second game of the season. I don't know whether Clemson's any good or not. Point is, that's a bad South Carolina team. Like, not very good. That's a bad team. But you know how I can tell that when John Calipari doesn't think his team's very good? He doesn't get mad. Like, he's praising these guys and asking the fans to stick with him and saying, I gotta do better and this and that. Like, when he thinks his team is capable of more, he will rip them in the press and he will go on some pretty good rants. He's not doing that with this team, and that tells me he doesn't know how much is there.
Yeah, he said after the Mizzou game in our presser with them, he was like, "I still really like this team," and I was like, "What do you mean still?" Like,
yeah, I mean, unfortunately for John, his fans do not particularly like this team, and they also do not like him at this point in time. So, Cam Cameron is wanting to know, ignoring the obvious, whose role or lack thereof on this team are you most surprised by? I'll let you take this first because I'm going to need a second to think about it.
Yeah, for the role I'm most surprised by, I'll go with Trey Gomillion. I think, him and Ronnie really moving up into the starting lineup and playing the number of minutes they have and making as big of an impact as they have has really surprised me. On the other end of the spectrum, I'll say this, I'll be transparent about it. I really thought that Mo Diarra was going to be a starter on this team going into the season, just because I thought Kobe plays best when he's not the biggest guy on the court for you. And so Mo Diarra would kind of let him move over to one of the forward spots. So that's been a surprise to me, is that Mo Diarra has not been a factor at all this year.
So here's my biggest surprise. It's Nick Honor. It's not that I didn't think he was going to play. And I actually even thought he probably would be the starting point guard. But I mean, when they signed him, I looked and I go, 7 points, 2 assists at Clemson. Like, that's fine. I mean, okay. That's like a rotational guy on a team that hopes to make the NIT. And it just shows you that these coaches know so much more and put so much more thought into, okay, I need a guy to fill a role. Like, if you and me are recruiting, if our message board is recruiting, it's like, well, this guy scores 20 a game and this guy gets 24 and this guy's got 17. So we're going to score 192 points a game and we're going to be incredible. Well, except for the fact that you don't have guys like Nick Honor who are perfectly happy going 1 for 3 on a night, dishing out 4 assists, just not turning the ball over and just kind of being steady. I mean, he has exceeded my expectations, I think, more than anybody else on this team.
And it's always fun to see the little guy,
yes.
do well against the big guys.
Short guys.
Yes. Yeah, and to his credit too, like, he's having his best season of his career. Like, it's and maybe it's because of the role they have him playing, or maybe it's just that, like, he's getting a lot more opportunity here. But like, Nick Honor's been outstanding for him.
I mean, he's turned into the guy that if you tell me, okay, Missouri's down 3 and they're going to run a set to get a 3, I think I want Nick Honor shooting that ball.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's him or Demoy.
Well, Demoy Hodge.
Yeah,
Demoy
I was
Hodge,
going to say
that's fair. That's fair. I did skip that one because he was busy puking in the last game. So you already kind of answered Cam Cameron's next question. I expected Mo Diarra to see more playing time. And
I think we
I
all
think I
did.
said this to you in the last game. Like, it's a little concerning to me that he can't play on this team. I mean, they are getting their brains beat in on the board and on the boards and in points in the paint. And look, there's obviously a reason. I'm not questioning the rotations. They're 13-2. Dennis Gates is in the National Coach of the Year conversation. But it at least has to cross your mind that if a 6'10 dude can't get time on this team, maybe he's not what they thought he was.
So this is my thought on it. Dennis seems to really like his forwards to be more of a facilitator in the
Mhm.
offensive scheme, right? And so you'll see Kobe Brown and Noah Carter, make decisions and bring the ball up and passes, right? And so Ronnie does a little bit of that. He's not as much of a shooter or anything like that, but he'll still get some opportunities to, facilitate from the elbows. Aiden Shaw doesn't do that as much, and he'll be somebody that Dennis throws in there to get him a rebound.
Mhm.
But it's only like 8 minutes of night. It's not a ton of time, and so if you've only got 8 minutes to spare, are you giving it to Aiden Shaw, who is a freshman with a lot of potential, or are you giving it to Mo Diarra, who is a JUCO coming in and isn't ready to perform at the same level as Ronnie and Noah and Kobe? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I think they're at with it. Is they just want to give the younger guy that opportunity right now?
And I think this might be saying kind of the same thing you were saying in a little bit more basic way, but the strength of this team, I think, is the ball movement, right? I mean, very, very rarely does the ball stick with this team. I mean, they whip the ball around. It reminds me a little bit of Frank Haith's first team here, or that played, Ricardo Ratliff as the center. He was 6'7", and Kim English, who was basically a shooting guard playing the power forward. But they moved the ball so unbelievably well because he had 5 passers on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, we haven't seen Mo Diarra enough to know what kind of player he is, but 6'10" JUCO guy, like, he may not be that guy. Like the offense may slow down and stick a little bit if he's in there, so that could have something to do with it too.
And on top of it, like sometimes it just takes a little time for the JUCO
Yeah,
guys to adapt to this level. Like it doesn't always translate as well as everyone hopes.
fair. Okay, so we've got like 3 or 4 straight questions here about the same thing. So I'm just going to pick one. Kyle wants to know, getting it out of the way, is Mosley playing tonight? We can report progress on that front. He was on the plane in the team video. So, I mean, that is further ahead than the last game. Whether he gets off the bench, we have no idea.
Yeah, I don't have any idea either.
I, I've gone from, I mean, I think most fans are at the point where they don't really care, but I am fascinated if he does play again to see how Gates works him in.
Hmm.
Because, like, I don't know who loses minutes on this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, it would knock on wood, but it would take an injury, I think, for him to see consistent minutes at this point. Just because it seems like Gates really has his rotation locked down.
I think he could. I think what he could become is a guy that you were just talking. Aiden Shaw basically gets 4 minutes a half to do one very specific thing, right?
Hmm.
I could see Mosley getting like 6 to 8 minutes a half to do one very specific thing. Come in off the bench when we need a basket, and if you get us
Hmm.
5 of them, great. And like we need a run here, whether we're up 6 and we want to put somebody away, or whether we're down 8 and we've got to get back in it. We need a guy who can go out and get a shot for 3 or 4 minutes here. That's probably the role.
But so the thing is too though, like there's been opportunities for that, right? Like the Arkansas game, they could have used him. I know he wasn't there, but and then
Yeah,
the
it's tough to play
Vanderbilt
when you're
game,
not there.
that's true.
I've noticed
But
that.
but but even the Vanderbilt game, like they have a really tough start to the first half. They could have used a bucket somewhere in there.
And I could be wrong on this, but to me, since UCF, it has seemed predetermined that Isaiah's not playing. And that might be the case tonight too. I don't know. Like we literally have no idea if he's going to play. But I think right now Dennis Gates knows if he's going to play, right?
Yes, I
I
agree
hope.
with that. Yes.
If he doesn't, I don't know. Check Twitter, Dennis. See if you should play him. Dustin wants to know if you put an Alex Oriaki or a Ricardo Ratliff on this team, how much better are they? I mean, guys like that are probably taking minutes away from Kobe Brown, so I'm not sure how much better, to be quite. Now, maybe they could play next to Kobe, but then it's a different style of game. Like, I think this team has gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't know, they're pretty good. I don't know how much I would change because it kind of changes the way they play.
I'm not completely sure who either of those players are.
Right. I kind of figured you didn't. Yeah. So they were basically, I mean, Oriaki started at UConn and he was more of a 6'10, like he was a post player. Went through a stretch. He grad transferred to Missouri, and he went through a stretch like the last 7 games of the season. I think he only missed like 4 shots because they were basically all alley oops from Phil Pressey. And then Ricardo Ratliff was the center, but he was like 6'7" on Frank Hayes' first team that won 31 games. He is now like the MVP of the Professional Basketball League in South Korea.
Okay.
Major celebrity over there.
That's pretty cool. So it just sounds like the question is what would happen if somebody with size,
if you put a bigger guy.
Yes. Yeah. I think it would just give Dennis another option, to be honest, like a different look to throw out there when he needs it. I don't know that it would change the wins or losses at this point because they've only lost twice. So, but yeah, I think it would just be something Dennis would have in his back pocket.
So, like I said, I want to finish up with a little bit of just kind of looking around the league and 4 games last night. We already talked South Carolina, Kentucky. We don't need to mess around with that. Florida gets a win at LSU. LSU now just 1-3 in the league. The win was Arkansas, and then they haven't won since then. I mean, I'm not. I honestly, I've not really watched them play. I don't know what to think of them, but like they came in after one conference game, everybody was talking about, wow, Matt McMahon and Dennis Gates really getting this done, and now they've kind of hit a stretch that I think a lot of teams in the SEC are going to hit, where like, oh, this is a pretty good league, man. Losing 3 in a row is not that hard.
Yeah. And, credit to LSU. They were in that Florida game for a while, and Florida just kind of pulled it out at the end. But that's going to be the case in a lot of SEC games this year. I will say on LSU, too, it's not like they had that good of a non-conference or that tough of a non-conference schedule. I think they only lost against Kansas State, but there weren't that many impressive wins on there either.
Yeah. Well, in the SEC, I think it's going to be so interesting because like that Florida game, I mean, you're looking at if they go to LSU, if they lose that game, they're 1-3 in the league, and so like these games, especially in January, can just yo-yo teams up and down the standings so quickly. So then my main takeaway from SEC basketball last night, other than Kentucky is apparently garbage, was the meme that's going around right now is the F around and find out chart, right? That's been the thing. Like Tennessee and Auburn kind of effed around and almost found out and then decided they'd go ahead and play a second half last night.
Auburn bouncing back from that Georgia loss, I think kind of reestablishing themselves as like, no, we're actually not effing around here. Like,
right.
But they were close. They were pretty close.
I mean, they were down for a good amount of the first half. Now, I just think like both of those teams played games. Vandy at home, Ole Miss on the road. Like those are the games that make the difference between are you one of those top 4 teams getting the double bye or are you sitting down at like 6, 7, 8? The teams that are in the top 4, like they're probably going to lose in Fayetteville, right? They're going to lose in Tuscaloosa. But they're going to go win in Oxford and they're going to beat Vandy at home.
Yes. And Tennessee too, they had a pretty close one against Ole Miss. And so like, I think just kind of like we said, like it's going to be tough to win road games in this conference. Like, do we know what the updated record is of SEC teams at home? Because it was pretty high to start the year.
Yeah, it was. I think it was 15-4 last night. I think they went. I think it was like 15-4 going into last night. Last night they actually home teams went 1-3. So,
Okay.
somewhere around 16-7, but still winning 2/3 of the games, which I think is pretty standard.
Yeah.
But then tonight, the early game tonight is Mississippi State, Georgia. If you have things to say about that game, the stage is yours. Please feel free. I have zero things to say about that game.
I don't have a ton of things to say about that game either.
That's one of those to me, like, I don't think Mississippi State's as good as they looked early. I don't think
Yeah.
they're terrible. But that's one of those that, like, if Georgia wants to not play on the first night of the conference tournament, they should probably win at home. But then, to me, maybe the best game of the SEC schedule so far, Alabama at Arkansas. Alabama looks like a juggernaut.
Hmm.
They look phenomenal. I'm a little bit surprised that Arkansas is favored by a point. Now, it is in Fayetteville, so only being favored by a point is kind of telling, but I I want to watch that one. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to be a heavyweight matchup for the conference for sure. And credit to Nate Oates too, because like that was not a great way to end the year for them last year.
Yeah,
And he's kind of rallied them back and gotten them kind of
that's
in a better spot, I think.
that is future Texas coach Nate Oates to you, Drew.
Well,
But no, but in all seriousness, like, I know Missouri fans are going to say, "No way, I'm not doing this." The SEC needs to root for Arkansas in this game, I think,
mhm.
because if Alabama wins at Fayetteville, then all of a sudden you're kind of going, okay, well, they're putting some teams in the rearview mirror here early with the 26-point win over Kentucky, a win at Arkansas. Who would you say is the best team in the league right now, Tennessee or Alabama?
I would still say Tennessee. I think
Okay.
Tennessee has a little bit more talent than Alabama, but I would say Alabama is definitely like the hottest team in the league right now. Like, I wouldn't want to play them.
Yeah, if Alabama wins tonight, both those teams will be 14-2, 2-0. A&M's the only other undefeated team in league play. They're 2-0. So literally, if Missouri wins this game tonight and Alabama loses, Missouri is tied for second. But if Missouri loses this game tonight, and they could be down in like 10th, so that's how volatile this stuff is. And
Yeah.
the SEC's got, look, I think right now Tennessee and Alabama have 1 seeds in their sights. I think Arkansas, hopes to maybe play itself into like a 2 or a 3.
Hmm.
Auburn and Missouri are teams that I think could be looking at this and saying, hey, we've got a shot at a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like, I, I'm not going to say top to bottom, this is the best league in the country or anything. But if you take the 5 top teams in this league, I'm not sure there's another league that you'd say I'd take the top 5 over that.
No, I tend to agree with you. I know like Ken Palm has the SEC as number 3 right now behind the Big 12 and the Big 10, but if you're talking
Well,
about just the top teams, like yeah, I think the SEC is probably the team to beat.
because the Big 12's biggest strength, it's kind of what the SEC says in football, right? Like, our ninth place team would destroy your ninth place team.
Absolutely.
So the Big 12 on any given night, but outside, it's hard to say Kansas State isn't elite because they've played elite so far. I don't know if I believe it yet. I think the Big 12 has 1 elite team. I think the SEC could have 3 and maybe even 4 if Auburn were to really get on a roll.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
And
I definitely agree with that. Um, the Big Ten too, like I'm not sure that there's any. I mean, Purdue's having a pretty good season, but
Purdue's good.
outside of them, like I'm not sure that there's going to be that many top 4 seeds that come out of there. You know?
Right, like, literally, who else do you? Illinois is starting to play decently, but I'm not sure they're great. Wisconsin just got brutalized by Illinois.
Hmm.
Michigan hasn't lived up to the hype. Michigan State started off slow. I think there are a bunch of good teams, but I think the top of the SEC is better than the top of any other league in the country.
Yeah, definitely.
So Missouri trying to join that top of the league. What are just kind of real quick before we get out? What are you looking for tonight? What kind of keys this thing if Missouri's going to come out of College Station with a win?
Yeah, so I think on top of Texas A&M not being a very good shooting team, they're also not very good going up against shooting teams, right? They have a pretty low 3 point 3 point percentage allowed this season, and so I think Mizzou's going to have to, kind of space them out a little bit and find their range because inside Texas A&M is pretty good at protecting the rim, and that's something that Dennis Gates actually brought up on his radio show earlier this week. He said we have to break the shell, and I think on top of that, him and Buzz Williams are very familiar with each other.
Mhm.
While Buzz Williams was at Virginia Tech and Dennis Gates was at Florida State, so I think it's going to be. Maybe some mind games too, like trying to throw some different stuff that the other might not expect. Um, and then the last thing I'll say, Texas A&M's point guard Wade Taylor, I think is really really good. I'm acquainted with his sister Kennedy Taylor, who is the all-time leading assist or all-time leader in assists at Texas State. So I had a little bit of an inclination that he was going to be pretty good, but he's really had a breakout year this season, and so he's a guy to watch for tonight.
I am going to super oversimplify this. And you can say this a lot about a lot of Missouri games, I think, but I think it's very true against Texas A&M and Buzz Williams and a team that doesn't necessarily shoot the ball super well. Over 75 points, Missouri wins this game. Under 75, A&M wins this game.
Agree with that. Yeah, I think Mizzou has to really speed Texas A&M up. They're not a fast-paced team like Arkansas
Mhm.
was, and so to um, overcome the deficit that's coming on the boards, I don't think Mizzou stands a chance at out rebounding Texas A&M. But so to overcome that, you have to beat them in a bunch of different categories. And I think if you win the turnover battle, make this a fast paced and high scoring game, that'll give you the best chance to win tonight.
Which is kind of our analysis of most Missouri games, to be honest,
Yes,
right? Like
right.
they're very rarely are we going to get to a game this year, probably never, and say Missouri really needs to slow this one down. But hey, is what it is.
If it's always going to be like over under 75 points that Missouri wins, it's always going to be the over for them.
Pretty much, right, right. So, all right, guys, 7:30 SEC Network. That Bama Arkansas game's at 6. It's on one of the ESPNs. But Mississippi State Georgia is on before Missouri, so I'm sure that you will be yelling at your TV while Georgia commits 6 fouls in the final 42 seconds, and you have to flip to like ESPN News or something to see the beginning of the Mizzou game. We'll talk to Dennis Gates afterwards. Drew and I will have full coverage of that one on the site tonight. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us here, and want to encourage you one more time to look. You got 4 hours before tip off. You got an hour and 52 minutes before James Carlton sends all his people home. And look, I'm going to guess that if you called James at 5:01, somebody would be in the office, but the man wants to watch the Missouri basketball game. Let him leave the office on time. So give him a call sometime before 5 o'clock today, 314-961-4800. You can go to carltoninsurance.net and find all the information there. Just give James a shot to save you money on your insurance. He probably can do it, but even if he can't, hey, you're going to take 10 minutes out of your day. You're going to be on a phone call with a guy who's a huge Missouri Tiger fan. You guys can shoot the breeze about Missouri sports. You can tell him you heard about this on PowerMizzou, and he's going to donate $20 to Every True Tiger Foundation on your behalf if you tell him this is where you heard about it. So I know you've got 10 minutes to waste. You've been sitting here listening to me and Drew for the last 39. So God knows you don't have anything else to do with your lives. So appreciate it, guys. We'll talk to you next time.